What do you say to people who say the 25th Amendment or impeachment, as we have seen twice before with this specific president, when it's controlled by Republicans, that's just not a realistic scenario?
I think you're using things too tactically. You've been so immune. How about moral principle? How about that when a president threatens to blow up other nations, that we have to see some response to saying that we have a higher moral dimension, that there's something called conviction in politics, that the lives of the Iranian people matter, that the lives of people in Gaza matter, that the lives of people in Cuba matter, that when Donald Trump is echoing Gallant and calling people animals who live in Iran, that we will be a Democratic Party who says that is morally wrong. And when we don't say that, and when we hide behind proceduralism, and when we hide behind tactics, and we hide behind the fact that we don't have votes, then what we say to most Americans is we're not willing to fight for our vision for America, for our moral vision. You know who is willing to fight for his vision of America? Donald Trump. And you know why the Democrats keep losing? Because we don't have conviction in our politics. We don't have inspiration and passion in our politics. We've got people there 50 years who read the same scripts, put out the same bland statements. Get out. Let a new generation lead. You've been ineffective. The base doesn't like you. The base wants fighters. The base wants people with moral vision. And the only people the base are more upset with than Donald Trump is the ineffective leadership of the Democratic Party to stand up when a president of the United States is threatening genocide.
You just heard Congressman Khanna articulate my thoughts to a T. And for context, he said this on Tuesday after Donald Trump had threatened genocide in Iran. And throughout the day, Democrat after Democrat came out and they called for Donald Trump's removal via impeachment or the 25th Amendment because he very clearly crossed the line. And Democrats who were savvy enough knew that that's what the base wanted. But what did Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer do? How did they respond, you ask? Well, they wrote tweets of disapproval that conspicuously left out a call for Donald Trump's removal. So we already know that Democratic Party's leadership can't lead, but if they can't even follow, then what exactly are they good for? And that's why what Khanna said hit so hard for me, because as unlikely as Trump's removal is, we need to see that you actually have a moral principle, as Khanna put it. Democrats need to show us that they actually care and they take this threat seriously. But time after time, they come up with excuses and hide behind proceduralism, and they always put the onus on voters and tell us that we just have to elect more Democrats if we want them to do good things. And when voters do give them majorities, they're met with even more excuses and new rotating villains, which perpetuate the cycle of disappointment that leads to Republican victories in subsequent elections. And we've been seeing the same shit for decades now. So much so that it is abundantly clear that leadership just doesn't believe in the same things that we do. It's not that they're incompetent, it's that they're making the choice to not represent us. We already know that both Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, they're not leading the charge against Donald Trump's war with Iran because they support it. Hence why every tepid condemnation of Donald Trump's war feels so forced and reeks of disingenuity. Contrast that with Republicans, however, and some way, somehow, it seems like they always find a way to get what they want, or at a minimum, steer the conversation and adjust the Overton window to their liking. Now, there are exceptions here and there, of course. Donald Trump isn't getting the SAVE Act, seemingly, knock on wood, that he wants. But aside from a few exceptions, there's just no denying that Donald Trump is fundamentally changing American politics in a profound way. It's changed for the worst, of course, but he's not afraid to wield power, and that's what we want Democrats to do, albeit for good. We want them to use the power we give them, no matter how big or small, and use it. But the reason why frustration with the Democratic Party has reached a boiling point is because we all know that they actually do know how to fight. We see it again and again. It's just that they choose to fight the left as opposed to Donald Trump and Republicans. And had they fought against Donald Trump's illegal and offensive war with Iran half as hard as they've been fighting against Hassan Piker, maybe Trump wouldn't feel as emboldened or uninhibited to be doing the things that he's doing in Iran. And Khanna, unsurprisingly, took the correct position in the great Hassan Piker debate of 2026 as well.
You have made several appearances on a show hosted by socialist commentator Hassan Piker. Some of your fellow Democrats, though, have raised alarms about his views. Here to members of a left-leaning think tank. This is how they put it. They wrote, quote, "No left-wing agitator is more influential and extreme than Twitch streamer Hassan Piker. He's referred to ultra-Orthodox Jews as inbred, employed anti-Semitic dog whistles, bloodthirsty, violent pig dog against an anti-Hamas viewer of his stream, compared liberal Zionists to liberal Nazis, and said Hamas is 1,000 times better than the Israeli state." Now, Hassan Piker says some of his comments have been taken out of context, but he largely stands by them. Do you have any regrets about appearing on his show?
None, and I would go again. But I, of course, condemn those comments. I mean, I've described Hamas as a terrorist state, and we need to unequivocally condemn anti-Semitism. But Hassan Piker was at the DNC in 2024, covering Vice President Harris. What should the standard of the Democrats be? Should we not go on Theo Vaughn? Should we not go on Sean Ryan? Should we not go on Joe Rogan? Should we just have these purity tests of canceling folks? The lesson of the last election is we've got to be out there. We've got to engage. It's a complex, messy, multiracial democracy. I will defend my views, but the people who are saying don't engage will cost us future elections.
Do you run the risk of legitimizing some of those views by appearing on his show? How do you answer that?
He's got millions of followers. He'll have millions of followers whether Ro Khanna goes on his show or not.
That was great. And what I find really interesting is that Ro Khanna goes on Fox News all the time, as he should. And nobody bats an eye. But Hassan Piker is apparently a bridge too far. Fox News is not a bridge too far, but Hassan Piker, that is the no-go zone for Democrats. I'm sorry, but cherry-picked quotes aside, the fact that Hassan Piker's comments are even controversial really does speak to the failure of the Democratic Party, because I'm sorry, this is what the base believes. You can agree with him or disagree with him. This is what the base agrees with. Condemn Hamas all you want, but the fact remains that Israel has killed more people than Hamas. They've committed the equivalent of 60-plus October 7s. They are by far and away the biggest terrorist in the region, whether Democrats will acknowledge that or not. And I hate to break it to them, but Zionism is an inherently fascistic ideology. And the Democratic Party's failure to acknowledge these facts is why they are so fucking despised by their base. But they won't acknowledge these facts, not because they're ignorant, but because we know that they support the genocide, so much so that leadership held hands with fascists at a pro-genocide rally to pledge their unconditional support to Israel. And I think you all know which video I'm going to play, but nonetheless, I'm going to do it anyway because it's still worth watching.
We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel.
Those are your leaders, Democrats. So Hassan Piker, as edgy and offensive as he may be to pearl-clutching Democrats, he is vocalizing our frustration and anger over our government's complicity with the genocide of Palestinians. So every Democrat who chooses to shut the door on Hassan Piker is also shutting the door on their own constituents, because Hassan is channeling all of their frustrations, and if he's persona non grata, then the rest of us are too, if we agree with him. But as you saw, Ro Khanna didn't hedge at all. He even said that he'd go on Hassan's show again, even though he doesn't agree with Hassan, because that is how you win. You go where the people are. And whether Democrats like it or not, Hassan Piker is the largest left-wing influencer in the country. But that's what makes Ro Khanna so different from these other Democrats. He's not afraid to engage with anyone. You see, most Democratic politicians, they will only go on independent news shows with hosts that they expect to not challenge them. Ro Khanna, conversely, will reach out to literally everyone, even if they are shit-talking him. Like, it doesn't matter how small they are. Ro Khanna will reach out and offer to have a conversation with them. I know because he's come on my show after I criticized him. He's gone on the Vanguard after they called him out. And even though I still have disagreements with Ro Khanna here and there and sometimes find his strategy puzzling, I don't feel like any of his positions are too ossified. He gives me the impression that he genuinely changed his mind with a good argument, and he goes out of his way to listen to what the Democratic Party's base wants and adjusts accordingly without making it feel like he's pandering to us. For example, after AOC committed to cut off all weapons to Israel last week, including so-called defensive weapons, Ro Khanna made the same exact commitment. He didn't agonize over it for days and commission a focus group and polls to see how voters would respond. He just fucking took the position that he knew the base wanted. And that right there is part of the reason why I think his popularity is growing so fast, because he's decisive and he's not overly calculative and he's not afraid to make enemies. I mean, For example, Silicon Valley oligarchs have their daggers out for him after he endorsed the wealth tax that Gavin Newsom opposed in the state of California. But I mean, Ro Khanna is in favor of it, even if he knows he's pissing off the wealthiest people in his district who are going to try to end his career because of it. Now, you can say that all of this is cynical political maneuverings, sure, but you can't deny how effective Ro Khanna has been. He's exposed Trump more than any other politician with his push for the release of the Epstein files, and he's been consistently anti-war for years now. In fact, he sponsored the House version of Bernie Sanders' 2018 resolution that would end U.S. complicity with Saudi Arabia's genocide in Yemen. Trump ended up vetoing it, but it was amazing that Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders were able to get it passed in the first place. And a strong anti-war voice is more important now than ever, since a lot of normie voters are going to be disillusioned with Trump after he promised them no new wars. Now, they should have never believed him in the first place, but I mean, regular people just aren't as savvy as you and I. They don't tune into politics that often, so if they hear Trump say he's anti-war one time, then that's going to be all that they need, to vote. And the problem is that there really just aren't that many strong anti-war voices within the Democratic Party. To the extent that we get resistance to war from Democrats, it's like, oh, well, you didn't do the procedural thing that you need to do to wage war. We have to vote on it before you can do it. Would I support it if there was a vote? Probably, but there's no consistency on this issue. When it comes to the Democratic Party and their position on war, it really ranges from Democrat to Democrat when they need to collectively agree to get on the same page and vehemently oppose war, because if they don't, that's going to leave a vacuum that could be filled by a right-wing huckster like Tucker Carlson or Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I think that Jennifer Welch perfectly explained why the Democratic Party has got to be anti-war. They have to be the anti-war party. That is an imperative.
When after the Iraq War and after the two disastrous Republican terms of George W. Bush, Barack Obama ran against, in the primary, John Edwards and Hillary Clinton, both more qualified politically, had more experience in federal politics than the young freshman senator from Illinois. Barack Obama was an anti-war candidate. John Edwards and Hillary Clinton voted to authorize a war based on lies in Iraq. Who won? Obama, obviously, and he's also like a once-in-a-lifetime generation. But whoever is anti-war going into these next elections, be it the midterms or the presidential, should we have them, and rest assured, Trump is going to try to disrupt them as best he can, that person is going to be positioned, whether they are a Republican or a Democrat, to win this race. That's why it is so important that Democrats be the anti-war party. Democrats need to go on podcasts, streams, news channels, and say, Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. The country of Israel, alongside with the United States of America, mainly funded by the United States of America, commits war crimes. And we oppose this because we are the peace party.
I agree wholeheartedly, and not only because it's good politics, but it's also good policy. And Ro Khanna is one of the few politicians in the country that is articulating a strong anti-war message that most Americans desperately want to hear.
American people are tired of going and being the world's policeman and thinking that we're going to go take out every evil regime. We did that with Libya, it didn't work. We did that with Saddam Hussein, it didn't work. And guess who campaigned against that? Donald Trump. He said, I'm going to care about jobs here. I'm going to care about childcare here. I'm going to care about manufacturing here. And now he's asking for $400 billion to go fight a war in Iran. Now he's putting our troops at risk in Iran. You know what I want the American president to do? To care about our people, to care about our jobs, our childcare, our healthcare. He has, I don't know who's gotten in his head.
So it's obvious that Ro Khanna has emerged as a de facto leader of the Democratic Party. He's giving a voice to the disillusioned base that has basically given up hope at this point. And I can't blame them for giving up hope, because we've been stuck in the same cycle for so long, it feels like we will never, ever get out of it. I call it the American electoral cycle, and I actually made this image to depict our current political situation. So Republicans destroy the country with wars, tax cuts for the rich, austerity, and then they crash the economy. Democrats then sweep. Then they end up implementing just incrementalist solutions that don't adequately address the crises caused by Republicans the last time they had power. Their voters feel disillusioned and tune out of politics and stay home, which then leads to Republican sweeping and then destroying the country again with more wars and new tax cuts for the rich and more austerity, and by destroying the economy again. But the destruction caused by Republicans grows exponentially each time the cycle starts again. They keep getting worse and worse and worse. And what we need is a Democrat who will finally break the cycle and pull off what FDR did and create a real majority of Americans that'll give the party electoral success long enough to actually fix the country. But to do that, Democrats actually have to deliver for Americans, so that way they don't become disillusioned with the party and tune out and not vote. This means that you've got to address the systemic issues that are making people feel so dissatisfied with the system. You have to end for-profit health insurance once and for all with Medicare for all. No bullshit half measures, no more ACA subsidies, no public option, just Medicare for all, full stop. Everything's covered, everything is free at the point of service. Period. You have to end corruption by getting money out of politics once and for all. You have to impeach corrupt Supreme Court justices and jail Republicans from the last administration who destroyed the country. And if Democrats cannot rise to that occasion and do all of these things, then the cycle is only going to continue to repeat in perpetuity. And just in case this wasn't already obvious, Gavin Newsom, Josh Shapiro, Rahm Emanuel, Andy Bashir, these Democratic presidential contenders are going to continue that cycle, just FYI. So if you were thinking of voting for them, don't, unless you want to get Trump 3.0, Giga Hitler edition, like in 2032 or some shit. Do not vote for the Democrats who are promising centrist milquetoast bullshit. Otherwise, the cycle will repeat. So most of the Democrats who are going to run in 2028 thus far are cycle repeaters. The only two currently on my radar that are going to break the cycle or have the most potential to break the cycle, AOC and Khanna. It does seem like they're both going to run for president. And, on the subject of 2028, I do find the prospect of either of them running pretty exciting because they're both ideologically very close. But we need to make sure that there is no repeat of the Bernie Warren situation in 2020 if that happens, where they split the votes. I think that both AOC and Khanna, they need to come together and have a serious conversation right now if they both want to run for president. And they need to talk about dropping out and endorsing the other at least a month before the Iowa caucuses in 2028 if one is the clear favorite to win. But it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. The person who drops out needs to get a position within the administration or ideally a spot on the ticket. I think that a ticket with AOC and Khanna would excite the base like never before, and they could be unstoppable. They're both solid on policy, but with AOC being a little bit stronger on class politics and Khanna being stronger on foreign policy, and his effectiveness combined with her name recognition and star power, that could make them a force to be reckoned with that would ultimately break the cycle, I hope. And if the left has solidarity while the opportunist, career-minded centrists split the votes, we could actually be in a position to finally take over the Democratic Party, assuming free and fair elections take place, because that's another hurdle that we have to clear to get to a situation where we can change the trajectory of this country. But it is nice to have options in 2028, but we need to be savvy and make sure we get an actual progressive through the presidential primary this time, because if we don't, then the cycle is going to continue to repeat, and the next Trump is going to be worse than this Trump currently. They're going to keep iterating on this fascist project that they're doing, and we need to break that fucking cycle. But to get back to the subject at hand, which is the Democratic Party's leadership, they are cooked. They are basically irrelevant for all intents and purposes. And that's really troubling in the short term because it enables Donald Trump and lets him be as unhinged as he wants to be without a strong opposition party to keep him in check. But the silver lining is that there are people who are stepping up to fill that leadership void, not just AOC and Khanna, but others like Summer Lee and Delia Ramirez. There's so many others. And that's really, really encouraging. That is at least one thing that's causing me to be cautiously optimistic during a time that is going to go down as one of the darkest eras in American history. So, you've got to look for the bright spots. I'm trying to convince myself to do that more. And what I'm seeing from AOC, Khanna, and others is very encouraging. So I hope they keep it up.